it is clean. Okay, great. So let me begin then. Yeah. Okay. So in the last lecture we looked at folds. In fact, the previous two lectures. So today what we'll do is yes. So today we'll look a little more at recursion. Okay, and one way to be smarter about recursion. Okay, and so today's lecture will consist of two examples, but one example will be a bit detailed, and I shall show you rather than just show you the final solution. I'll show you the naive solution, and I'll show you how to arrive at the smarter solution step by step. Okay, and that's a very good exercise. It's a very good exercise in thinking about programs. So in fact, what you call deriving programs. Okay, so you get a naive solution first, and then by a step-by-step transformation, you get a better solution. Okay, so this is as much about crafting better programs from a way of designing programs or some programming methodology rather than just an example or some method to get something more efficiently. Okay, so I wish to illustrate this methodology by these examples. Okay, so let us consider the first example, namely the Fibonacci numbers. Every one of you is familiar with the Fibonacci numbers, right? Or they should actually be called Pingala numbers or some such, because it is there in Chandas Shastra. These same numbers appear there. But anyway, so popularly they are called Fibonacci numbers. And the definition is that fib 0 is 0, fib 1 is 1, and fib n is fib of n minus 1 plus fib of n minus 2. Okay, so let's try to program this. We're going here. Okay. Okay, so there is already an like 15.hs, but I'll delete it. Okay, anyway. What did I want to do? I'll also okay. So what do we want to do? We want to do fib. Int arrow integer, let's say, because we won't be giving. Anyway, this function grows so fast that okay, so we program this. Okay, great. So let's try to run this. Okay, I've loaded this. So you run it on small inputs, fib 10, 55, fib 50. Yeah, already it takes time. Fib 50 already takes time. So let me abort it. Fib 20. Okay, that wasn't too bad. Fib 30. Fib 30 also takes time. So, but the program itself looks simple, right? What is the problem? Why is it taking so much time?
Sir, the number of function calls is exponential.
Yes, and, yeah, because fib n calls fib n minus 1 and also fib n minus 2, but fib n minus 1 itself will call fib n minus 2. Okay, and then so fib n calls fib n minus 2 twice. By the same reasoning, fib n minus 2 calls fib n minus 4 twice, but there are 2 calls to fib n minus 2. Therefore, there are 4 calls to fib n minus 4, 8 calls to fib n minus 6, 16 calls to fib n minus 8, etc., etc. Okay, so you see that fib n calls fib n minus 2 twice, once directly and once from fib n minus 1. Fib of n minus 2 calls fib of n minus 4 twice. Therefore, overall fib n will call fib n minus 4. Each call of fib n minus 2 calls fib n minus 4 twice. So fib n will call fib n minus 4 times. It will make 8 calls to fib n minus 6, etc., etc., etc. Okay, and that's a problem. So there are at least 2 to the k calls to fib of n minus 2 times k. Okay, if you work it out. And this is sort of like exponential. And in fact, one can precisely pin down how many calls are made. It appears that fib n takes time exponentially then. And in fact, it does. Let fn be the value of fib of n. Let gn be the number of recursive calls to fib 1 when you compute fib n. Okay. And now g of 0 is 0, because if you call fib 0, you don't need to make any recursive call to fib 1. G of 1 is 1 because you're calling fib of 1 once, the outermost call. And G of 2 is 1, okay, because there is one call to fib of 1. G of 2 is fib 1 plus fib 0, remember. And the claim is that for all n greater than or equal to 0, G of n equals f of n. Can somebody tell me why? The claim is true for 0, 1, 2. What about others? It's a simple induction. So what is G of n? Number of calls to fib 1 in a call of fib n. But what does fib n do? What is the definition of fib n?
Fib n minus 1 plus fib n minus 2.
So what can you say about the number of calls to fib 1 from fib n? Number of calls to fib 1 in fib n minus 1 plus number of calls to fib 1 in fib n minus 2. Okay. So,
Okay,
but those are gn minus 1 and gn minus 2. So g0 equals f0, g1 equals f1, and gn in general equals g of n minus 1 plus g of n minus 2. And if by induction you say that they are f of n minus 1 and f of n minus 2, you have that, see, for n minus 2, there is one call to fib n minus 1 and one call to fib n minus 2. So g of n is g of n minus 1 plus g of n minus 2. That is, by induction hypothesis, f of n minus 1 plus f of n minus 2, which is nothing but f of n, right? Because that is the value of fib n, right? That is f of n minus 1 plus f of n minus 2. So now you have, so essentially what you are doing is to compute f of n by this method, by the naive recursion method, you are really adding 1 to itself so many times. Okay, you're doing unary computation. Okay, you're doing so many additions. Okay, how many additions? As much as you have whatever f of n minus 1 additions. Okay, because you f of n once you will line up and you will add them. Okay, so this is clearly inefficient. But why is it still exponential? Because if you recall, f of n itself is this. This you can if you find out how to derive this, it is nice. But you can just sit and verify it by hand, by induction, that this thing holds for every n. And the crucial thing for you to note is that 1 plus phi is phi squared. Yeah, that is the crucial. What is phi? I need to tell you. Phi is root phi by 2. Okay, and psi is 1 minus root phi by 2. So there are these two quantities, and your f of n is actually equal to phi raised to the n minus psi raised to the n divided by root phi. Okay, that's a thing that you can prove. When you have time, go look it up. Go look at Fibonacci numbers and these things. But you can verify this by induction. Okay, and you need to verify that 1 plus phi. You can verify this for f n equals 0 and 1 for larger numbers, you need this fact that okay, so that you can sit and verify. And I suppose also something similar holds for psi also. You can verify. Okay. I think 1 minus psi is some such. I think
I satisfy the same quadratic equation. So I think phi and psi satisfy the same quadratic equation.
Yeah, that's right. So 1 plus psi is also psi squared. I suppose so, but you can check. Okay. So anyway, so you can check and verify this. But the point is that therefore this f of n is exponential. Okay. And you are going, g of n is also the same as f of n. So you are actually taking exponential time in n. Okay. Now this was not the main point of this lecture. How do you make things better? Okay. Okay. Directly. So what is happening? The real problem is that you computed fib n minus 2 when you called fib n minus 1, but you have forgotten value. And then you later go and make another call to fib n minus 2. Okay. So in some sense, you are making multiple recursive calls with the same argument and not storing the results anywhere. Okay. Okay, how do we know how to store values? We can store values by giving names to them. Okay. One way that we know how to store values is by using lists. As you compute a value, you add it to a list. Okay. That is one canonical way that we know. But before that, for the case of Fibonacci numbers, you can do a small trick, which is that at any point of time, you only require two arguments. Okay. Two previous values. Fib n minus. Yeah. So ideally, store values of computed recursive calls completed, let us say, in a different programming language you would store it in an array, but here in Haskell we only have lists. We haven't yet introduced arrays, and we don't need the full power of arrays anyway. So store it in a list. But for Fibonacci, fib n only needs fib n minus 1 and fib n minus 2. Okay. Even though in the list that you think about, you will store the fib 0, all the way till fib n. That is what you think. You can just get away with, so to compute fib n, you will store all the previous values, but you only need the last two values. And the way to use that, yeah, so this is wasteful recomputation. And yeah, in the case of fib, it suffices to just keep track of two values, the last two values, and you don't even need to explicitly store them. You pass them as arguments. Okay. So initially, this you say go with, and this 0 recall is fib 0 and 1 recall is fib 1. Okay. You do that, and how long do you need to repeat this? N times. Okay. If you want to repeat this 0 times, then you are returning fib 0, so you have to return the A part. At any point of time, this, yeah, so right, so right, so so in a call to fib, yeah, go. No, it's okay. Okay, if you give initial value of fib m and fib of m plus 1, and then you make a call of go abn, it should give you fib of n plus m. Okay, so that is the thing. So if you make a call to fib 0, then it will give you the first component a. Okay, because by that time you have finished. Okay, right. So this is the recursive function. So let's program this. I mean, actually speaking, if you want it to be more transparent, the code, you will have to say this. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, this is the crucial thing. So you're saying if the initially you're saying start from 0 and then you want to count up all the way to n. Okay. So from I, if I is equal to n, then you will stop and return a. Sorry, not n, a. Because a is storing fib of 0. Sorry, a is storing fib of I, b is storing fib of I plus 1. Okay, always. Okay. Let me just in Go, this is what is happening. Okay, so therefore you know this. But when you make the, so if you are in Go ABI and you want to make a recursive call, what will you do? Now your arguments should be, right now A is fib of I and B is fib of I plus 1. Now you will make a call to some A prime, B prime, I plus 1. Now what should A prime be?
B,
Why B?
because you're moving forward.
Fib of I plus 1. So let's say that A prime should be fib of I plus 1. So it's B. And B prime should be A plus B, because that is fib of I plus 2, which is nothing but fib of I plus fib of I plus 1. Okay. So okay. So this is another version that you can write. I'll have to call it fib prime or whatever. Right. But it is wasteful to count up. So instead I'm counting down. In the slides, if you see, instead of counting up, I'm counting down. Okay. So I'll start from n and go down all the way to 0. It is the same as starting from 0 and going all the way up to n. When I do this way, then I automatically have a stopping point, namely when I get, when that third argument becomes 0. And instead of having 3 arguments, I'm having only 2 arguments and keeping one as a pair. I could just keep it as 3 arguments. So let me just do the fib double prime, which would be our version that I've given in the slides. Fib double prime equals go 0 1, where go of a b 0 equals a, and go of a b n is go of b a plus b n minus 1. Okay, this is just a much simpler version of that, where I count down instead of counting up. Okay, so now, yeah, so we have install these functions. Let me go here, reload, and do the same fib30. Huh? Oh, I should do fib double prime 30. Yeah, you see that it's much quicker. I can even do some ridiculously large numbers, of course. Fib of 1000 also I can do. Yeah. Whereas forget about doing fib double prime of 1000 I can do. Fib of 1000, if I do, my machine will, hopefully it will say I'm out of resources and not hang completely. But yeah, so do you, I hope you can appreciate the difference, right? Between that naive recursion and this. And look at this, we can even do fib of whatever. Something I have to do to do this, but anyway, you can see that it's a large number. Okay, fine, good. So you can try it out yourself. Okay, but what about the other method? I wanted to go to the other method where instead of storing just two values, I store all the computed values till now. Okay, and I would like to look at that nevertheless, because that shows you something very nice. Okay, so recall that this double bang is going into it will extract the element at that position in a list, at some particular position in a list. So fib n is fibs double bang n. Okay, what is fibs? Fibs is the infinite list of all Fibonacci numbers in order. Okay, this is very nice. And the way you do it is just to say that, okay, we'll try to derive this actually rather than show it this way. If I derive this, then it will be clear to you what is happening. Where am I? Yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay, fibs is nothing but fib I such that I ranges from 0 ... Is this clear? Okay, but that is nothing but, so this, all this should be inside comments. Okay, that is nothing but fib 0 followed by fib 1 followed by, how do you write followed by fib I of I ranging from 2 ... Okay, good. This is fib of 0. Okay, now what is the definition of fib? Can somebody tell?
Sir, fib of I minus 1 plus fib of I minus 2.
Great. Fib of I minus 1. Yeah, let me write it as fib of I minus 2 plus fib of I. Doesn't matter, right? Where I ranges from
2 onwards. ...
Yeah, 2 and onwards. 2 onwards. Okay, great. Let's go further. Fib 0 followed by fib 1 followed by, okay, so can I make the yes, so can I change, instead of saying I ranges from 2 ... I'll say that fib I'll say fib j minus 1 plus fib j, where j ranges from 1 ... I can do this, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just shifting the indices 1 down. Then I minus 2 will become, j is actually I minus 1, so I minus 2 will become j minus 1. Okay, and so on. Okay, now notice that, let me just extract these things as Okay, so now this is a large list where each element is some expression. Okay, some fib j minus 1 plus fib j. Now I can, whenever I have such a thing, I can write it as zip width of apply plus on fib j minus 1, j goes from 1 onward, and okay, great. So now, is there something we can rewrite further? What is the whole idea? Okay, fib 0 is what? We know already what fib 0 is. What is fib 0?
Head of fibs.
No, that is
Zero,
fine. But
zero,
directly,
zero.
we know the value
Zero.
of fib 0 directly. 0.
Zero.
Fib 1 is 1. Okay. So instead of writing fib 0 followed by fib 1, I'll write 0 followed by 1 followed by zip width of plus on. Okay. So now you see that there is a j minus 1 and j ranges from 1 dot dot. Okay. If j ranges from 1 dot dot, then j minus 1 ranges from 0 dot dot, right? So I can write the first thing as fib j or fib k such that k ranges from 0 dot dot. Right? I'm reducing. So instead of, I'm taking k to be j minus 1. So if j ranges from 1 dot dot, j minus 1 ranges from 0 dot dot, and k is j minus 1. So k ranges from 0 dot dot, and instead here, instead of writing fib j minus 1, I'm writing fib k. Okay, there is reason for doing all this. You will see it in a minute. Okay, if somebody is sending something on the chat. How to stop GHCI compiler at runtime? Do Control C, should work. Fib j such that j ranges from 1 dot dot. Okay, so now what is the point of doing all this? Now I can get a definition of fibs. Remember, we started out with the definition of fibs. This is what we want to define. I can get a definition of fibs without referring to fib. That is really my point. So, okay, but this is really a circular definition. But I want to show this beauty to you. Okay. Okay, zip width of plus of. What is this? Fib k such that k goes from 0 dot dot. What is another name for that?
Fibs.
Okay, great. And what is another name for fib j? J going from 1 dot dot?
So you remove the head, so tail fibs.
Tail of fibs. Okay, great. That's all. So now you have a direct definition of fibs in terms of itself. Okay. It looks like it is circular because to define fibs, I need fibs already and then tail of fibs. But remember, Haskell is lazy. Okay. So it will, to start off with, it will initially install 0 and 1 as part of fibs, and then it will try to do your computation. And if you want the nth element of fibs, it will only compute till it gets n elements in this list. Let us check this out. Okay. Let us now install this as a definition. Fibs list of integer. And I will define it as fibs equals 0 colon 1 colon zip width of plus on fibs and tail of fibs. Okay, great. Now we have it. Okay, so let me. Okay, right, great. So let me go here. Let's do fibs reload. Oh, do you see? I mean, I'm computing a whole huge list, an infinite list, in fact, and I'm extracting the nth element. But because of laziness, it all works. And what is more, it works as efficiently as the fib double prime. Fib double prime of 1000 was what? How much time did that take? That also took 0.01 seconds. And in fact, that takes more memory, if anything. Whereas this is taking much less memory, actually. Yeah. So you can also do fibs, the 10,000th elements of fib. Yeah. So 0.02 seconds, you get an answer. Whereas if you do fib double prime of 10,000, yeah, this even takes a little more time than direct fibs. Okay. So just, okay. So now this is a nice thing. This is actually a circular definition, but it works only because of laziness. You are defining an infinite list in terms of itself. It works because you have determined you have initially installed the first two elements, and then you are saying go to town with itself. Okay. Let us, but rather than leave it as a mystery to you, let us work through why this actually works. Okay. Okay. And to figure out why this actually works, let me, for simplicity, write small z instead of this whole expression. Instead of this whole expression, I'll write small z. Okay. Okay. And then clearly then fibs is 0:1: z. Okay. Because it's 0:1: that whole thing. So fibs is 0:1: z. Now we'll concentrate on how to define. Okay. Fine. What more? Substitute. Yeah. So now z was defined to be this whole thing. The definition of z depends on fibs. The definition of fibs depends on z. But actually, you can substitute this value for z so that the definition of z does not refer to fibs. Okay. So the definition of z is nothing but zip width of plus of 0:1: z and 1: z. But this you can actually, the first value at least you can evaluate, and that is 1: zip width of 1: z and z. Okay. So therefore, z is this value. Okay. Z is this value. Okay, great. Is this clear? How I arrived at that? And finally, fibs is 0:1: z. Z itself is this definition. Okay. So I can write, instead of writing fibs in terms of fibs itself, I'll write it in two steps. Fibs is nothing but 0:1: z, where z is 1: zip width of plus on 1: z and z. Now, for the purposes of illustration, I'll also recall what is zip width. Let me instead of writing zip width plus always and let it occupy space, I'll write it as go. Okay, space on my screen, I mean, not space in when Haskell runs the program. Okay, I'll call, let me denote zip width of plus by go. Then, and also remember that the list is infinite, so I can explicitly give a definition for go. What is the definition of zip width? If you recall, zip width of right, this is the definition, right? But because I know that the argument that I will give will always be non-empty, therefore what can I do? When I give an explicit definition of go, I can cut out on the first two cases, because the first two cases will never ever arise. So I can just define this to be go of x:x's, y:'y's is x plus y followed by go of x's, y's. Okay, that's the definition that I can give. So this is my final code where everything has been explicitly defined. Fib is the double bang operator applied on fibs. Fibs is 0:1: z, where Z is 1 colon go of 1 colon Z and Z, where go of X colon X's and Y colon Y's is X plus Y followed by go X's Y's. Let me just install this definition in our like 50/H's. Then we'll come back here and show you what exactly happens when this thing is evaluated. Yeah. Okay, so we are here. Okay, so this fibs integer, what I'll do is actually I'll say that I'll fib triple prime. Okay, this is done. And fibs itself, rather than writing it that way, I'll say 0 colon 1 colon Z, where Z equals 1 followed by go of 1 colon Z followed by 1 colon Z and Z. Go itself is okay, great. So let's okay, so you cannot, when you do this double bank thing, you cannot apply it on the index cannot be an integer, it has to be an int. Okay, great, we are done. Okay, so now yes, so this also works the same way. Okay, but we have explicitly written out all this definition. Let's see how it works. Okay, defining it is fine and it works very quickly. Why does it work so quickly? Okay, let's figure out. So this is what happens internally. Okay, your Z, this is Z actually. The square with the green, the square filled with green is actually my Z. I think so. Oh, I'm very sorry. We all hear some sound from the road. Oh, thankfully it has passed. Okay, so this is Z. Okay, and recall that Z is nothing but 1 followed by go of 1 colon Z and Z. That is what is being depicted here. Z is nothing but, so 1 followed by, so I have the colon operator being applied on 1 and something, 1 and what is it? Go of, sorry, oh, this is fibs, this is Z. Okay, this is fibs. Yeah, because fibs is 1 colon Z. Okay, and Z is the colon operator applied on 1 and go of, what is it? 1 colon Z, which is nothing but this. This is fibs, that is also 1 colon Z. Okay, fibs is actually, that's not fibs. This is 1 colon Z, right? Because the colon operator applied on 1 and Z. This green square is Z for me. And Z itself is the colon operator applied on 1 and go of 1 colon Z, which is this, and Z, which is this. Okay, so you see that there are 2 arrows. The go will make recursive calls, and it will actually internally, this is what happens. Internally, Haskell builds a graph like this. Okay, and it will evaluate as it goes. It will never completely evaluate the thing. It knows that, okay, it has to do go. What should it do go on? Should do go on 1 colon Z and Z. So it will just put pointers here and there. But the real nice thing is what happens when you evaluate this go. Okay, recall I said that go of X colon X's, Y colon Y's is X plus Y go of x's, y's, right? Okay. In our case, x colon x's. So what is x and what is y in this case for the go? Can somebody tell?
Sir, both have to be 1, right?
Yeah, x colon x's is nothing but 1 colon z. Y colon y's is nothing but z. But z itself is 1 followed by something, okay, by our definition. So both x is 1, y is 1. So when you do this definition, it will become 2. X plus y will become 2. So this go will be replaced by 2 followed by go of, okay. So all x colon x's is this. So what is x's? It is this, okay. Y colon y's is this. So what is y's? It is this, okay. So it will first simplify, it will first apply some definition on go, it will expand the graph a little, but then it will readjust the pointers. So what actually happens is that you will get this, okay, because this one plus this one is equal to this 2, and then the left thing, this was the x's and this was the y's. So it has progressed further, okay. And if you expand this go, it will become 3 followed by now x's is this. I'll change color. Now x's is this and y's is this. So it will now move forward, and x is 1, y is 2. So it will now become 3. This whole thing will become now 3 followed by go of, and then the appropriately the pointers will be adjusted as you will see here, okay. So this becomes 3 followed by, this go, and this pointer points here and that pointer points there. You can keep on going, then it will become 5, and then if you see there is a tree with one spine, it's like a comb if you think about it. This is the spine of the comb, the skeleton of the comb, and these are all the teeth of the comb, okay. Teeth, spine, okay. Whole thing is a comb. Yes.
No, I didn't understand, sir. Like, how is the graph made? I didn't understand what the initial x is, what the initial y is, and so on. I didn't understand where x, y.
One second. Let's go back. The definition of go is go of x colon x's and y colon y's is x plus y whatever, right? X plus y followed by go of x's and y's. So now this go has 2 arguments. The left argument is this list. The left argument at this point is 1 colon z. The right argument is z. But z itself is, remember, 1 followed by something. So the x is 1 and y is 1. Yeah, see the right argument of go, if you follow here, you will see that that's a colon. The colon will have a left hand side and a right hand side. The left hand side will be your y. So this is y. The left argument, if you go all the way here, you will see that it's a colon. Its left argument will be the x. So that's x. Okay. So when Haskell evaluates, it figures out all this by just following these pointers.
Okay, sir. No, I'll
Not that you need to know the full details, but this is what happens. But the nice thing is that because of this, you will actually, what you will do is you will keep expanding this comb by adding more and more teeth. Okay. Each tooth is a value. Okay. And at every point of time, you only have, just like with your the earlier solution, you only have 2 pointers that you maintain. One to the last value and one to the penultimate value. And you keep expanding like this. Okay. So yeah, and then you will go 5 and this whole thing. So the point is that there is always only one unevaluated go. And that go will have a left argument and right argument, which won't be completely evaluated values, but they will be expressions. But expressions inside Haskell internally are graphs like what I showed you. So instead of saying expressions, it will point to some 2 nodes in the graph. Okay. Pointers to 2 nodes in the graph on the tree. Actually, it's a tree with some this thing. And as your go is evaluated more and more, the pointers move down and down. Okay. And that's it. So essentially, you are walking through the spine of the tree, computing things as you go along. Okay. So, okay. So good. So this is what is happening with fibs. Okay, therefore, we have a very, very cute solution for Fibonacci numbers, which works very well. And I've also tried to explain why it works. Now, the idea is to apply this solution method to a much more substantial problem. Okay, and the much more substantial. Okay, so this is what is called the technique of dynamic programming. Dynamic programming basically says if you make recursive calls, save the return values of the recursive calls. That's all there is to it. Okay, so keep track of already computed values to avoid recomputation. So the next time you want to make a call to fib n-2, don't make the call. Just pick out the stored value. Okay, so this is achieved in the case of fibs by using a list that is defined in terms of itself. We want to do a very similar thing for a more substantial example next. Okay, and it's now 3. I'll take time till 3:30 or whatever. 3:30 is okay, right? You don't have a class next, right?
No, sir.
Okay, and sorry about that, but at least I want to make some headway through this example. Okay, this example is called longest common subsequence. Okay, so given two strings A's and B's, A's is a list of characters, B is another list of characters. You want to find the length of the longest common subsequence of A's and B's. Okay, what is longest common subsequence? Okay, so we want to basically define the function LCS. Actually, you will see that LCS length or whatever is what I'll call it finally. So here, if you have AGCAT and GACT, then the common subsequence is GAT. The same GAT occurs here. Okay, you are allowed to skip stuff in between, but you have to read out the same string in order from left to right inside both the given strings. Okay, GAT is a subsequence you can read from left to right in both these strings inside AGCAT as well as GACT. So that's a subsequence, and you can verify that you cannot find any larger subsequence. So this is the length of the longest common subsequence is 3 here. And if you have LeBron James and Michael Jordan, then your longest common subsequence as you can verify is E space JA. Okay, so E space JA. The same thing is E space JA. And you can't find anything else. You can't go back and forth. You have to go left to right. You are allowed to skip characters in between, but you have to read the same string ultimately in both. Okay, that's what you mean by subsequence. Okay, is the definition clear of longest common subsequence?
Yes, sir.
Let's look at a Haskell definition. Okay, the thing is, there is a very simple way to define this in Haskell. If the first letter is the same in both strings, then you don't want to worry about whether some later, the first character will match with some later character. So if this matches, so keep it. Okay, if the first letter is the same in both strings, then that letter is always in the longest common subsequence. Otherwise, you drop the first letter in one or both and then find what the longest common subsequence is. So I'll give you the and then you have to compute recursively. I'll give you the Haskell definition, which is easier to understand. So LCS of empty string and anything is 0 because there is no subsequence at all. The longest common subsequence of the empty string is the empty string itself. LCS of anything and empty string is 0. But if you come to LCS A's and B's, then let us say A comma A's prime is the head of A's and tail of A's. B comma B's prime is the head of B's and tail of B's. Then what we are saying is that I could as well have written instead of writing head of A's and tail of A's, what could I have written? Anybody?
So split at
Exactly, split at 1. 1 or 0. Split at 1. Anyway, be that as it may. If the first letters are the same, then I'll just say the first letter matches. So at least there is one character. And then I want to compute LCS of A's prime and B's prime. And then I add this to that. Okay. Otherwise, I'll do LCS of A's prime comma B's and LCS of A's comma B's prime. Okay. Because the first letter I don't know where to match of the first string. So I could either choose to say that, okay, the first letter in the first string the first letter of A's doesn't match with anything, so I'll drop it and then I'll go ahead. Or I can choose to say the first letter of B's I'll drop and I'll do whatever I want. This is sort of like merge. If you see, you either drop the first letter of the first string or you drop the first letter of the second string. Okay, but where is the repetitive call happening here? Definitely, the LCS S prime B is going to call LCS S prime B prime, and definitely the LCS AS B prime is also going to make calls to that. So if you separately make calls to LCS S prime B's and LCS AS B prime, then you will definitely make two calls to this. This will make two calls to its this thing. Every call of this will make two calls to its. So this is exponential. So is it clear why this is exponential?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it is the same problem as with fib. Okay, and okay, so this is the naive solution. So let us install this in our this thing. Let us write this program on, and rather than write this program ab initio, I will. Okay, this is our naive solution, and in fact, this is just a bit of Haskell that it's useful to know. You will say, instead of saying a comma as prime is split at etc., you can just say as, where as, when you give a pattern, when you give a name as an argument, you can give a name as well as a pattern that it will match. Okay, as at a colon as prime means you can either use the name as to refer to that argument, or you can use a colon as prime to refer to that argument. Okay, which means that automatically you can use a as prime etc. Okay, so as which looks like a colon as prime and b is which looks like b colon b prime. So this is add. Okay, these are called add patterns. Okay, as you write an argument name, you can give some patterns that it will match. Okay, and then that will give you two ways of referring to the same object.
So could you just repeat this?
Okay.
How to use that?
Yeah, 1 second. Let me just remove at. Really, here I want to say LCS naive of a colon as prime. So okay, so I need to do it in stages. Sorry.
Oh, so you're referring to a colon a s prime as a s.
Exactly, that's all. Okay, you got it. Okay, right. Yes, I'm able to refer to the parts as a s prime, but also I am able to refer to a colon as prime as just as directly. I have two ways of referring to them. So you can give a name followed by at followed by a pattern. That's a simplification. That's a nice thing that Haskell offers. Okay. Okay. So give me some two strings now. I have run out of imagination. So give me two strings. Let's try that AGCAT. Okay, this is saying 3 with this thing. Can you give me something else? Something larger. Hello and what? Let's try this.
And yellow.
Okay, so you can see that even this takes time. That is all I want you to notice. Okay, this already takes time, And you can imagine that hello and yellow you want to say. Okay. This should be 16, I suppose. Well, okay. But you can see that it takes a lot of time. And there are stupid examples which will take a lot of time. Okay. So let's try this. I don't know how many ABs I've done. I intended to give 20. I should get an answer like 20 or whatever, but it will take something like a whole minute even, or half a minute or whatever, which is really large. Okay. And notice that this is the kind of function that is a very useful function, whether you do text processing or whatever. And typically you will be looking at much larger strings, right? Strings of length 1000 and whatnot. Okay. See, this takes 26 seconds. So, and this is just some length 40 and length 25 or whatever. You can imagine that if the length goes up much more, then this function will take much more time. Okay, but I would rather not try it on this machine, because I mean it is just wasteful use of resources, or it will crash. So right. So instead, what I'll do is same problem as earlier. So what I'll do is I'll try to give you a better solution for this. Okay, I'll try to see how much I'll go. The remaining we can finish on Thursday. Okay, so this takes time exponentially. Then same problem as with fibs. Multiple recursive calls repeated with the same arguments, and you are not storing the return value. You are making the calls again and again wastefully. Okay, so let's move towards a smarter LCS. But rather than directly flash the program at you and explain how it works, or maybe just to impress, so I should flash the program at you directly. And this is the function that computes length. So yeah, why not? Let me just okay, great. So I have done this. This is the function that takes two strings and computes the length of the longest common sequence. And let me save this. Let me go here and reload this. Let me repeat the same example as earlier. Recall that that took 26 seconds or whatever. That was the naive solution. I'll instead do this LCS length. Yeah, you see the difference? Yeah, this takes 0.02 seconds, and I could actually give larger. I mean, how does it matter? I could give much larger strings as inputs. And even then, see, this is 47, and still it finishes in 0.06 seconds. Okay, so good. So I have a better version, but what is this better version? Let us try to figure it out. Yes. So first step is that. So the first step defines LCS in terms of head and tail. So my A was head and A prime was tail. Instead, I will actually do A prime and A, where A prime is init and A is sorry, A is the last element and A prime is init. Okay, that is what I want to do. Okay, it is very, very similar. So rather than checking, so what am I doing? Rather than testing whether first two characters are equal and then making a decision, I'm checking whether last two characters are equal. If last two characters are equal, then I'll add the last character as the as belonging to the common sequence, and then I will only look at the prefixes. Okay, the init portions. Okay, so rather than split your list as head and tail, I am splitting it as init and tail. Is this clear? Init and last. Is this clear? Yeah.
Yes.
Rather than programming based on the first character in both strings, I am programming based on the last character in both strings. Okay, great. But what is it of what use is that? Okay, so suppose length of A's is M and length of B's is N. Okay, then let me define, just like earlier we defined this fibs, etc., and then finally we so we originally wanted to define fibs, but then we defined something. We have fib. Okay, we want to define fib. From that we derived fibs, and then we defined fibs in terms of itself. So we didn't have a dependency on fib at all. Then finally we defined fib in terms of fibs. Okay, so rather than defining fibs in terms of fib, we are defining fib in terms of fibs. But for that you need to get a direct definition of fibs without referring to LCS. Okay, so that is what we want to do. So let us define a function called Fij. Okay, this function will work where I ranges from 0 to M. M is the length of A's. J ranges from 0 to N. N is the length of B's. Okay, Fij is nothing but LCS of take I's and take JB's. Take I's means the first I characters of A's and the first J characters of B's. Okay, this is what I want to do. This is my definition. Then first step is that you can define F directly without referring to LCS. How do you do it? Okay, F0 of anything. F0, remember, corresponds to the first argument being empty string. Okay, so this Ij refer to the length of the strings because take I's and take JB's, right? So I refers to the length of the first string. So 0 is the length of the first string, means the first string is empty string, in which case you can say that the answer is 0. F of anything 0 is 0 because now you are saying that the second string is the empty string. Okay, F of Ij is, recall that you have this, right? If A is equal to B, then 1 plus LCS A's prime B's prime. Else max of LCS A's prime B's, LCS A's B's prime. Let us see what that translates to here. Instead of saying A equal to B, I will check whether A's of the I minus first letter of A is. Okay, because remember I want to talk about the first I characters. Okay, right. The first I characters are position 0, 1, 2, 3 all the way up to I minus 1. So here I am checking whether the character at position I minus 1, which is the same as the I character. Okay. And similarly, position J minus 1. Okay, so I want to check whether they are equal. If they are equal, then I am going to include them. So that is the 1 plus. Okay, include them and then do what? You want to do LCS of A's prime and B's prime, but A's prime, remember now, if you're taking A's to be your, if you're taking your original string to be take IAS, then its prefix is what? Take I minus 1 AS. In other words, Fi minus 1 and J minus 1. Okay, so this corresponds to LCS of take I minus 1 AS, take B minus 1, J minus 1. Okay, that is what this corresponds to. And similarly, these things. This corresponds to LCS of take I minus 1 A's and take JB's. Yeah, and this corresponds to LCS of take I A's and take j minus 1 B's. That is what this corresponds to. Okay, so yeah, so this is what you're doing. So instead of writing it out as a whole messy expression, let me first just erase these things that I've written, which are not really. Okay, so instead of writing it out as a whole messy expression, I am encapsulating it as a function g. G takes two characters, A and B, and then three values, D, U, L. Why D, U, L? D stands for diagonal, U stands for upper, L stands for left. Okay, D, U, L stands for diagonal up left. You will figure out why in a minute when I draw a picture. And all you're doing is, if A is equal to B, then 1 plus diagonal value, else max of left value and up value. Okay, this is the basic function. But now I need to give appropriate arguments. The appropriate arguments are A is at I minus 1 for A, B is at j minus 1 for B, and these values fi minus 1 j minus 1, fi minus 1 j, fi j minus 1. Okay, so is this definition clear of f? I am defining f now without referring to LCS at all. Not saying this is the final solution, because f also has multiple recursive calls that it will do without, you are not storing anything yet. But at least this is going towards what we want. But first tell me if this is this definition clear of f? Apratim Ghosh. So what did you not understand? Ask me. So maybe I should do it this way.
I kind of lost track of the computation. So could you explain it again?
Yeah, I'll do it again. 1 second. Just give me a minute. Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, because in general, LCS of A's, B's is the way we are doing it. Compare the last element. If it is the same, then do 1 plus LCS of the prefixes. Otherwise, you do max of LCS of one string, another prefix. And first prefix of first string, the whole of the second string. Okay. So in terms of these indices, this is what you will get. Okay. So, right. So if you are in general doing this, you will get this. Okay. Now, since I am saying Fij is nothing but okay, this is my Fij. So I can go and replace all these long LCS take whatever by F's, right? Apratim?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so therefore I'll go and rewrite it as saying that Fij is if A is at I minus 1 equals B is at j minus 1, then 1 plus f I minus 1 j minus 1, else max of f I minus 1 j. Is this clear?
Yes, sir. I understood.
Okay, good. So now instead of writing this expression as such, I have my own reasons for doing this thing. What I'm going to write it, I'm going to write it as Fij equals g of okay. So I'm going to write it as g of this thing. What is g? G I'll write in a small letter somewhere here. I'm sorry about that. G A B sorry. Whose money am I saving? I'll create a new page. So for reasons that will become clear later, what I am going to do is I am going to for reasons that will become clear soon, I'm going to rewrite this thing as
Sir,
yes,
sir, you're building a Fij
I am building
a grid, like a grid.
right.
About
That is what
the-
I'm going to do. Yes. Right. Right. So instead of writing this and to make it easier to present my grid, what I'll do is I'll first assume that there is a function g a b e l u, because this, remember what all I have. I have a is at I minus 1, b is at j minus 1. Those are two letters. Then I have three values: f of I minus 1 j minus 1, f of I minus 1 j, f of I j minus 1. Right. So these UL, right? That's right. 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 I have 5 values that I am dealing with, and this is the function that I am writing. So I'll write that function as g. G a b d u l is nothing but if a is equal to b, then 1 plus b, else max of u and l. Okay, I'm not doing anything fancy. Then finally, I am going to write f of ij as, this is just a simplification, as g applied to as I minus 1, ps at j minus 1, f of I minus 1 j minus 1, f of I minus 1 j, f of ij minus 1. Yeah, nothing. I'm just rewriting my original expression in terms of some smaller bits. Okay. That is what I have written here. Now, do you understand, Apratim? Yeah. So that is this thing. This whole thing. Okay. So f of ij equals g of whatever. Finally, you can recover LCS A's B's as nothing but f of mn, because take m of A's is nothing but A's. Take n of B's is nothing but B's. Okay. So this. Finally, you can recover LCS A's B's as f of mn. So now you can concentrate on f. Let us concentrate on f. Now, like somebody said, I have a grid, and so again, what I'll do is I'll create a new page and I'll explain it. Okay, so this is good. I'll choose a proper color. So what am I building? My Fij values. Okay, so imagine that I have my A is written here. Okay, each AI corresponds to a row. I will have an A0. I'll first have an empty string. There is nothing at all. Corresponding to 0, there is something, but there is no system at all. Okay, this is the 0th row. The first row corresponds to the letter A0. Second row corresponds to the letter A1, etc., etc., etc. And on the columns, I will have B's across these columns. The first column corresponds to the value 0, which you can ignore, and then you will have B0, B1, B2, etc. Actually, A m minus 1. Okay, great. Okay, this is what you have. What can you say about the values in the first row? Remember, this is F0, whatever. So an arbitrary entry here is Fij. The entry here will be Fij. Okay, great. So what can you say about the entries in the first row? Those are F0, whatever. What is the definition? Can you recall? F0 of anything is what? The way we have defined? Here, I have it here.
So 0.
F0 of anything is 0. F anything of 0 is 0. So therefore, you automatically have the values in the first row and first column. They are all zeros, right? So here it's all zeros. Here it's all zeros. Okay. And in general, what all does Fij depend on? Fij will depend on what AI is.
Upper left hand diagonal.
Exactly, that's all. Okay. So AI you need to figure out. You need to compare AI and Bj. So there is dependency on A and Bj. And otherwise, it is defined in terms of if AI is equal to Bj, then you will do 1 plus f of I minus 1 j minus 1. So that is the diagonal entry. Otherwise, you will take f of I minus 1 j and f of I j minus 1, the max of them. So in general, there are 5 values that flow into the computation of Fij. Okay, it depends on AI, Bj, and then upper left and diagonal values. Okay, so this is the crucial part of our. So this is how you fill in the grid. Okay, but you fill in the. So now you need a way to represent the grid. The way to represent a grid is as a list of lists. Okay, and then you can define all these things. But there is a nice way of defining it. Okay, the nice way of defining it is to first think of each row. Okay, each row Ri is nothing but f of I j, where j ranges from 0 to n. Okay, so what is R0 then? Can be directly defined.
0.
All zeros. So if you, how many zeros? N plus 1 zeros, because there are, oh, okay. Yeah, n plus 1 zeros. If you want to get n plus 1 zeros, what you do is you get it by saying replicate n plus 1 and the value 0. Okay, that will give you all zeros. Ri in general. Okay, so now I'll go back here because now R0 is replicate n plus 1 0. Ri is nothing but the first element is clear always. For Ri, the first element is always 0. And then the rest elements, I'll work it out here. Ri is 0 followed by G applied to A is whatever I minus 1, B is at I j minus 1. But f of I minus 1, j of I minus 1, f of I minus 1, j, f of I j minus 1. For j going from 1 to n. Okay. This is the thing. Okay. Yes. So rather than saying f of I minus 1, j minus 1, I can say the value at position j minus 1 of r minus 1, ri minus 1. Because ri minus 1 is that list. Remember, ri minus 1 is this list. So rather than saying f of I minus 1, j minus 1, I can directly say this. And I can directly say r of I minus 1, j. ri j minus 1, I can say. Okay. Ri at j minus 1. So now notice that this is very, very much like fibs. You have ri here, you have ri here. Okay. You are defining ri in terms of itself. You have an initial value. So your recursion will go through. But you also have a dependence on some two other elements. Some A is I minus 1, B is B is j minus 1 you have. But also you have ri minus 1. You are depending on I minus 1 also. So you can therefore directly define ri in terms of ri minus 1. But I think it is just too much time. If you are willing to do it, I can go through for 10 minutes. Otherwise, I can come back. So remember this. I'll go back and we'll do this picture and then I can do this in the next class. The slides I'll put up right now. So you can look at the slides and appreciate what is happening. But we can also go through the rest of the computation once we come back. So what do you say? Do you want me to finish this or do you want me to take a break now and resume on Thursday?
Say you can finish this.
Okay, so you want to finish this. Okay, what I'll do is I'll quickly go over this and then I'll also recap this on Thursday. Yeah. So we are here. Okay. Ri has been defined in terms of itself and in terms of ri minus 1. Okay. Let us simplify a bit further. Okay. So here is one crucial bit. So just like with fibs, you defined it in terms of tail of fibs, etc., etc. So you can just now say that ri equals, but you need to not ri, r equals 0, ri, right? Ri equals 0 followed by, okay. But you need to notice that throughout this computation, this a as I minus 1 is fixed. This is not fixed. J varies. Okay. So really you can, but you want to compute for all j. So you keep the ai fixed and then you go over all characters in B. Okay. So basically what you're doing is this. So there is a function called zip3 in Haskell, which will take 3 lists and it will just make triples of the corresponding elements in the 3 lists. So if you do zip3 of ri minus 1, tail of ri minus 1 and ri, then you will get this f of I minus 1 j minus 1, f of I minus 1 j, f of I j minus 1. Okay. So this you can figure out. So from j going from 1 to n. So ri can actually be defined as zip width of, okay, remember we originally do a zip width of g and the first argument is fixed, but the b argument varies as j varies. So you have zip width of g applied to this fixed letter from a and consider all right. So this is the function. So remember that g is a function from 2 characters to something arrow something. So g of is I minus 1 is a function from 1 character to these triples. So basically, this is a function from 1 character and 1 triple to an integer. So you can now do zip width. Zip width of G of A's at I minus 1 is now a function from list of characters to list of triples to list of M's. Okay, that is what you're doing here. Okay, so zip width of G of the first fixed argument and then B's along with zip 3 of Ri minus 1 tail Ri minus 1 Ri. So this is the crucial point. This Ri is being defined in terms of itself. Okay, and now this Ri depends on Ri minus 1, right? Just like we generalize this function as G, you can actually generalize this process, and what you will get is you can define a next row function. Next row function is basically next row of a letter A, which is corresponding to this Ri minus 1, and you can compute the next row, which is Ri. The way you define it is next row is in general 0 followed by zip width of GA applied on B's and zip 3 of R tail R and next row R. We can go through this slowly in the next class, but basically you are generalizing this whole procedure. The procedure that you use to get Ri from Ri minus 1, you are generalizing. And why do you generalize that? Because you can do the next stage. Remember, this is only defining each row based on the previous row. Now you need to define so many rows, right? You need to define M plus 1 rows. So the way to do it is to define it as an LCS table, LCS tab, that is the grid, whatever. And this is all rows. So M plus 1 rows. Okay. And this also can be defined in terms of itself. And the way you define it is to say that LCS tab is nothing but R0, which is the original row, followed by apply the next row function on every previous row. Apply the next row function on using AS at I minus 1 on LCS tab at I minus 1. But this whole thing can now be stated as LCS tab itself is R0 followed by zip width of next row of AS LCS tab. Okay, this is the final beautiful definition that we get. Okay.
Sir, last slide. Can you?
I'll explain it all properly in the next class. Okay.
Okay.
But I mean, you will have enough time to go through the slides. I'm just saying this is same, just generalizing the whatever we did with Ri and fibs and so on, we are doing right now. Okay, because the next row function takes a letter and a row and gives you a new row. So if I do this kind of thing, I'll have a string of letters, I'll have a string of rows, I'll get a string of, I'll have a string of a list of letters, list of rows, and I'll get another list of rows. Okay, and this is my definition. And I have my first row to begin with, so I'll get a list of rows, which is the LCS tab. Finally, if you look at the grid, if you want your final value, it will be in the last row and the last column. So you can recover your you can recover your final answer as this. Last of LCS tab. Last of LCS tab will go to the last row. Last of LCS tab will go to the last column of the last row. Okay, and this is what your final answer is. And this you can install as your program finally. Some 4 lines or whatever, but you can see the enormous amount of improvement that you have done. And with just this amount of code, you have built a whole table. Okay, with the proper, filling in the entries in the proper order, etc. All thanks to laziness of Haskell. And this whole thing will work because, because you are anyway asking for, you are building only a finite table. You're not building an infinite list now. You're building a finite list, but even that can be built in terms of this circular, what looks like a circular definition, but it is fine. Okay. So yes, so in fact, when I last ran this, yes, so the naive recursion gives me this much, whereas the DP version will give me this much. Okay. So, okay, good. So yeah, and in fact, one more thing which you can do is to recover the subsequence itself, not just do the length alone, but recover the subsequence itself. For that, you need to store not just an integer, but an integer and a string. The current subsequence that you have determined to be common to both this thing. You can do all that. We can explain it in the next class. Okay.
Sir, can I ask a question, sir?
Yes, please.
Sir, in both fibs and this example, in the first program, we were coding the program from top to bottom. I mean, like from the arguments we received to the
Right,
bottom.
Right.
And in the improved version, we were building from bottom to the top.
We are not really. That is the point. You want to build from bottom to top,
I mean,
but
the
Haskell
evaluation-
allows you to do it from top to bottom because of laziness.
Oh, okay, sir.
Yeah, that is really the nice point. You can define it as though you are. I mean, if you think about it, if you try to figure it, if you try to execute it the way it is written, it won't work. It will work only because of laziness.
Okay, sir.
Okay, right. But your intuition is right. You want to do bottom up, but Haskell allows you a nice way of doing bottom up rather than worrying about the order in which you fill entries, etc., which you would do in an imperative language like C or Java or whatever. You will use an array and you will say in this order fill in the entries, etc. Here you are able to do something very nice, okay, which is retain your top down sort of, but use these circular kind of definitions to get what you want.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so we can look at it more. I'll upload these slides to the thing. I'll try to maybe draw a proper picture of this grid and how you compute this grid and various parts of this by the next class. And then when we come in the next class, I'll again go over this whole thing from the grid onwards. Okay, so just we'll spend 15-20 minutes. That will reinforce the thing for you. But the nice idea here is that very often, if you just follow recursion to solve a problem, it might be very, very inefficient. And there are ways of making it better. This is one nice way of making it better. Okay, namely, if you are defining a one-dimensional, if your problem has one argument, then typically you will have to build a list, and you can build a list in terms of itself. Okay, but if your problem has two arguments, you might have to build a table. You can define each row of the table in terms of the previous row and itself, and you can define the table itself in terms of itself. Okay, finally. So it's the same pattern repeating over and over again. It's a nice pattern that Haskell's laziness allows you. But another maybe a cleaner way without involving all this of doing it is to use arrays. But arrays requires you to understand a bit more about it is not in the standard way in which you do Haskell. So yeah, maybe after going through this, I can introduce arrays. I'll see. At some point of time, I'll introduce arrays. But this is one solution. Okay. So, okay, good. There are no more questions. Then I'm sorry for going over time. I'll stop now. And we shall, hopefully you are intrigued and interested enough to come back for class on Thursday, and we'll finish this and do more stuff. Okay. Fine. Okay. So
Thank you so much.
yeah, so if there is nothing else, I'll stop share.